Hello Game Makers, this is GameMaker Rob, and in this tutorial I'll be showing you how to make a basic inventory system like this where you can pick up, drop items and a few other things as well. So let's get into it. So as usual, I'm going to show you the sprites I have before we get started with the code. This sprite has all the different images for the different items I'm going to use. They're all potions, but they're all different colors. The sprite size is 64 by 64 and they are centered in the middle. Originally these sprites were 16 by 16. I just enlarged them to 64 by 64. I've also got the inventory box itself. I only need one because I'm just going to draw it for every single item that we have. The size is 64 by 64 and centered in the middle. And last of all, there is a selection sprite. This is going to show what item is currently selected. Okay, so we go into our player objects. I've got a couple of enumerators set up. So we have the items themselves. For at the moment they're just colors, but you might have one called armor, another called iron sword, you get the idea. And we also have the item stats themselves. So every entry here is going to have its own name. You might have cost as well, damage, that kind of thing. And we also need an array just to define the name of all of these items, because I want to be able to display the name as well, just to give you a few different options on how you want to actually display your inventory. So obviously we've got red potion all the way down to brown potion. So that's the initial setup for this. The next thing we need to do is actually create the inventory slots themselves. We're going to be using an array for this because arrays tend to be easier for people to understand, especially when they're beginners. And we're going to have 6 slots for the inventory. The easiest way to set up an inventory is a for loop, especially when using an array. So we're going to say for var inv equals 0, inv is less than max inv slots, inv plus a inv, that's the name of our inventory. Inv is going to be 0 to 5 equals -1, and -1, if our inventory slot stores the value of -1, then essentially it means it's empty. So we're making 6 empty slots in our inventory. Let me just display what this is going to look like visually. So draw GUI, draw the inventory. It's worth noting that I am using a view in my game room, and I'm going to show you how to draw the inventory onto the screen no matter where you are in the game world. That's why we're going to use the draw GUI event. So we are going to want to say for var inv equals 0, inv is less than, that's right, max inv slots, inv plus. And now we want to say, let's set up some coordinates. The start inv x is going to be the room width divided by 2. And then to make sure that the 6 items are centered properly, I'll have minus sprite get width SPR items all times 2.5. That should do it. Room width, because we're using the GUI, it's going to be half the width of the view. And because the sprites are centered, I need to get half that height of the sprite to be able to draw it from the bottom. So now we have these two values. We're going to say item x equals start inv x plus inv times sprite get width SBR items all. And item y, that's always going to be the same. So we're just going to say item y equals start inv y. And now we're going to draw the background for the inventory. So draw sprite SBR inv box 0. There's only one image. And we want item x, item y. Let's just run the game, make sure that these show up first of all. It might help if we put the object in the room first. Let's try that. Okay, so there we go. There's 6 ugly looking item slots waiting for the items to get on there. So go back into OBJ Player. Now what we're going to do, we're not going to draw the sprites. We're going to draw the information stored inside our inventory. We can say draw text item x, item y, string of a_inv, inv. So if you remember, every entry of a_inv is going to be -1. So what we should see is 6 entries of -1. Let's just, I don't think we need to change the H line, V line. They should be centered automatically. So let's run the game again. Make sure this is working properly. Cool, so now every entry is showing -1. So what happens if we add some items to the inventory? So inside the create event, role equals iRandom1. If role is equal to 1, a_inv inv equals iRandom sprite get number SBR items all -1. So sprite get number, it tells you how many images are inside the sprite. Inside the sprite there are 7 images, so it's going to return a number of 7. We don't want that number. We want to have the image index numbers, which is 0 to 6. That's why we have -1. So this is going to return 0 to 6, and whatever number is there is going to be stored inside our inventory. So let's run the game again, and hopefully we should see a few different numbers now. So there we go. So we've got 3 number ones, 2 4s, and a -1. So this is just so you can visualize what's actually stored inside the array. How we're going to display this to the player is really simple. Instead of this bit, say testing, we're going to say item equals ainv. So items are going to return -1 to 6, and we need to check if item is greater than -1. So if the slot isn't empty, then draw sprite SPR items all. Then item, it should be 0 to 6 now, and item X, item Y. Let's run the game. So now we are displaying the items rather than the numbers themselves, but this image is just a number. Okay, so the next thing we are going to do is have the player be able to add items to his inventory as well as drop them. Just make sure that you have 2 sets of sprites for your items. One needs to be one needs to be the same size as your tiles. One needs to be larger for the actual inventory. I guess you could always resize them using the image X scale and image Y scale. I don't know why I didn't think of that before, but there you go. So we're going to have a new object, going to call it obj item, going to give it the 16 by 16 sprites, and in the create event we're going to say image speed equals 0, otherwise it's going to cycle through all the images in the sprite. Image index can be irandom sprite get number SBR all items -1, and that's going to give us a number between 0 and 6, if you remember. I think that's it for the items for now. Just want to place them in the room. For my sprites, I have centered them in the top left, just so I don't have to mess about placing them in the room properly. Let's add some items. Okay, let's just run the game, make sure everything's working as intended. Okay, cool. So we've got about a dozen different objects, and they all have different sprites, different numbers. The only thing I don't like is the player is drawn underneath. That's because the player is drawn first. You can easily fix that by having a different instance layer. There we go. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is actually make a script to pick up the items. I'm going to call it SCR pickup. I'm going to copy and paste this bit. I always forget what to type. Item, cool. And what we want to do is loop through the inventory and check for an empty slot. So for var inv equals 0, inv is less than OD player dot max im slots inv plus plus. I wouldn't recommend using an object name to get a variable, because if you have more than one instance of OBJ player, you can get problems. But just in case you're going to run this script from somewhere else, I just wanted to show you where you need to reference the variable from. Say, for example, if you have a global variable, you might have it like global.maxInSlots. You could use that. In my example, I've got obj player. So cycle through the inventory, check for an empty slot. So check for empty slot. If a_inv is equal to -1, then it's empty. We're going to add the item. A_inv equals item. So now this -1 is going to become 0 to 6. Those are all the possible numbers it can become now. Destroy item. So we'll call it item instance. So whatever instance we're touching is going to be destroyed. And then we need to break out of the loop like that. Okay, cool. Okay, so now if we go into our player, step event, we're going to use collision rectangle. So we need to get some coordinates. X1 is going to be our X, Y1 is going to be Y, X2 is going to be X plus sprite width, Y2 is going to be Y plus sprite height. So just to explain collision rectangle, basically we're going to be checking for a square around the player. My sprite is, the origin is in the top left, so X1, Y1 is going to be this top left corner, and X2, Y2 is going to be this bottom right corner. So I'm just checking for a square around the player, and what collision rectangle is going to do, it's going to detect if it's colliding with any instance of obj item, and if it does, it's going to return the ID of that item, and that's how we're going to know which particular instance of obj item we're going to be picking up. This kind of stuff is really useful. Whenever you look at the manual, if you're looking at collision functions, some of them do return the ID of the instance. Not all of them do, but some do, so it's worth checking what they do first before you use them. So go back into obj player. So if we are colliding with an instance of obj item, then item instance ID equals this. So that's going to give us the ID of the instance. Item is going to equal item instance ID dot image index. So if you remember, all of our items will have a different image index. It's going to return 0 to 6, and those numbers are going to match exactly what we have in the array. Then we want to use the script pickup item, and we want to have item and then item instance ID. So if we now run the game, we should be able to pick up some items. Oh, should be a semicolon, not a colon. Okay, cool. So we've maxed out our inventory. We can't pick up anymore. Now we are going to drop them. The first thing we're going to do is actually use the selected item sprite. So inside OBJ player, let's just put this into a region. Pick up items. The first thing we do actually is we're going to have the ability to hide or display the inventory. We'll say if keyboard check pressed VK tab. We don't need this. We can just say show inventory equals not show inventory. We're going to initialize that variable as false, and then in the draw GUI we'll say if show inventory then show this. Let's just make sure that this works first of all. Awesome. Yeah, I'm just toying with the idea of stopping the player being able to move. I think I'm going to need to do that for this example, because I'm going to be using the cursor keys as one way to select the items. So step event movement, this is my movement code. So all I want to say is if not disabled, and do this. And to be honest, we could use the same variable as show inventory, but there may be other times in your game where you want to stop the player moving, but you don't want to show the inventory. So this is why I want to use a separate variable for that. And actually, yeah, I do want to have a second line now. Disabled. So if we're showing the inventory, the player is disabled and he won't be able to move. Okay, so now we have that out of the way. we're going to have another variable called selected item. And in the draw GUI, inside our for loop, where we display the items, we want to say if selected item is equal to inv, then draw sprite SBR selected item, item X, item Y. So basically inv is going to be from 0 to 6. Selected item is going to start at 0 because we've assigned it in the create event as 0. And whenever the variable inv and selected item are the same, we're going to draw our selected sprite. So let's run the game. Show the inventory, and we see the first slot is selected. Pick up a few items. There we go. So now that we've done this, in our step event, let's make a new region. Cycle through inventory items. And we're going to be using the cursor keys, which are the same keys I'm using to move, which is why I wanted to disable play movement first. So if keyboard check pressed VK right, if selected item +1 is less than or equal to max inv slots -1, so if it's less than 6, just increase selected item, else selected item equals 0. So we're going to go back to the start. And for left, we're going to say if keyboard check pressed VK left, if selected item -1 is greater than or equal to 0, then selected item can -1, otherwise selected item will equal max inv slots -1. So again, if selected item is 1 or more, then it will just minus itself by 1. We only want to do this if showing inventory. Otherwise it's going to be changing as we're moving. So pressing left and right, you cycle through the items. The reason we're doing this is so that we know what item we're going to drop. Okay, so now we are finally ready to actually make our drop script. So scr drop. Just copy and paste this bit. Scr drop. We only need the item number because we're going to create an object inside the script. So we're going to say a new item, or actually, sorry, if item equals argument 0, I'm going to say if item is greater than -1. So basically, if the entry in the array isn't empty, then new item equals instance create layer, and we want to we'll have it on the players X and players Y. So obj player.x, obj player.y, and the name of the layer I want it on is called instances, and we're going to create an instance of obj item. What we need to do as well is new item dot image index equals item. There we go. And the last thing we need to do is ainv, or obj player dot a inv item. No. Yeah. Equals -1. So all this line is going to do is just make sure that we're emptying the item from the inventory. So selected item is going to be 0 to 6, and whatever entry that is in the array is going to be set to empty. Otherwise, we could just duplicate as many items as we wanted to. So we just need to incorporate this script into our game now. So let's do another region, drop item, and we shall say if show inventory, if keyboard check pressed vk backspace, item equals ainv selected item. That's going to give us a -1 to 6, and then script drop item. We're going to pass the number to SCR drop. So let us run the game, see if this all works as intended. Let's get some items. So one bug we're going to have actually is as soon as we drop it, the player is going to pick it up again. You can see like this. So we need to find some way to stop that happening. Okay, so how we're going to fix that issue is we are going to have another variable inside obj item, or the first one, and it's going to be called can be picked up. And for every initial item, we're going to set it to be true. And in the step event, we're going to say if cannot be picked up, then x1 equals x, y1 equals y, x2 equals x plus sprite width, y2 equals y plus sprite height. If collision rectangle x1 y1, x2, y2. obj player false false. So if we're colliding with the player and we can't be picked up, then do nothing. We're waiting for the player to move away from us. Else, player has moved away, set can be picked up to true. So now we have this bit of code in place in obj player in our step event. When we are picking up items in this bit of code here, before SCR pickup, we want to say if item instance ID dot can be picked up, then pick up the item. So let's run the game. Make sure this is working properly now. Let's pick up a few items. Let's drop the brown one. There it is. The brown one's still there. We can move around a bit. It's not going to collect it. As soon as you move away, we can now collect it. Let me just show you the numbers for this one as well. So inside obj item, draw event, draw text xy string can be picked up. So all we're going to see is a load of zeros and ones for the items. Hopefully it'll give you more of an idea how that bit of code works, how this bit of code works here. So all these items, they're ones, they can be picked up. 1 is true, 0 is false. Obviously now we've got to our 6 items, we can't get any more. So let's drop 1. And you can see it's set to 0. As long as we're touching that square, it's still going to be 0. But when you move away, it's set to 1. And that's how the code works. The other thing I want to say is, if we drop all of these items, they're all going to be on the same square. And if we move away and move back, they'll get picked up again. You may not want to have all of the items on the same square. One thing we can do to randomize their placement is inside SCR drop. Let's just change this. So XX equals obj.playerx plus irandom range minus 8. I don't need 2 sets of brackets for that. YY is going to be very similar. Actually, I need to add sprite width divided by 2 because I want to work it out from the center of the sprite. There we go. So if we just delete the draw event for the items, then let's see how the random placement works when dropping it. Let's collect some items. Okay, so if we drop all of these, It's like a random placement. Awesome. So that's it for part 1 of this inventory tutorial. There are a couple more things that I want to do. I want to show you guys, including how to use the mouse. I'll do that in the next episode. But this is going to be a precursor to actually having a shop tutorial. I figured there's no point having a shop tutorial without having an inventory one too. So I will see you next time. Bye for now.